Time when the housing market is red hot and the price is sky high. Canadian household debt has risen to record levels, often because of large mortgages that purchased pricey homes. One man who paid off his mortgage in 3 years has now written a book called Burn Your Mortgage: The Simple, Powerful Path to Financial Freedom for Canadians. Author Sean Cooper joins us now from Toronto. Mr. Cooper, it's an enticing title. Tell us, first of all, a couple of details about your mortgage. How much was it for, and how did you manage to pay it off in 3 years?
Good morning, Brad. Well, my mortgage was for $255,000, and I managed to pay it off in 3 years' time in two ways: by boosting my income first and also living very frugally. So beyond my full-time job, I actually worked as a personal finance journalist, and I was a landlord as well. I lived in the basement and rented up the upstairs of my house. So I was able to pretty much double my income, and I put all that money towards my mortgage and essentially paid it off in 3 years' time.
So $250,000 mortgage paid off in 3 years by taking on extra work. More revenue stream and cutting down on your expenses. What were some of the things you found yourself cutting back on?
Yes, for a lot of people, they spend money on entertainment. So I certainly still had fun, but I was smart with my spending. For example, I still would go to the movies, but maybe I would go on Tuesdays instead of during the week, during the normal days, because I could save money. And what I talk about in my book is that two of the biggest expenses for people are groceries as well as transportation. So if you can cut back on those, maybe save 10 or 15%, then that would be great. So instead of maybe owning 2 vehicles, if you're a family, you could perhaps cut back to 1 vehicle and look for ways to save on auto insurance, for example, with websites like Kinetics.
You mentioned an interesting point when you mentioned the word family. How important is it to get your family or significant other on board with your plan?
It's definitely important because personal finance, it's all about getting the whole family on board. So I realized what I did, paying off a mortgage in 3 years, probably isn't realistic for most people. But in my book, I go over ways for people to save money, whether they're single or they have a family. For example, if you're a family, instead of owning 2 cars, you might only own 1 car. And instead of buying a brand new car, you could buy a 2 to 3 year old car from a registered car dealer. So there are definitely ways to save money, and you should definitely discuss this with your spouse, because you have to have everyone on board in order to pay off your mortgage sooner.
I'm afraid I don't know any details of your personal life, but I'll ask this on spec, if you will. Was it difficult to convince your other half that you wanted to do this? So was there some opposition that you faced in coming up with this plan?
Well, I'm actually single, so I don't have another half. But I would say the biggest thing for paying off your mortgage early or even saving a down payment is keeping yourself motivated. So for me, I basically had an end goal in mind. I was thinking about what it would be like to be able to achieve financial freedom. So for me, financial freedom meant not having to work a ton of hours, but it could be many things for many people. For example, it could be working at a less stressful job, or it could even be traveling or volunteering. So once you have that end goal in mind, that's what really motivates you to pay off your mortgage early. And each payment that you make, you're one step closer to financial freedom. And that's really what kept me going every day.
I want to take just a couple of seconds more to ask, now that you have paid down and paid off your mortgage, have you returned to doing some of those things you just mentioned that you sacrificed during that period of saving? Do you travel more now? Do you eat out more? Do you go to movies on days other than Tuesdays?
Yes, I'm definitely not as careful with my spending as I was before. But that being said, step 1 of financial freedom is only a paid-off house. If all your money is in your house, you don't necessarily have any savings. So what I'm doing now is the money I was putting towards my mortgage, I'm actually saving that between my RSP as well as tax-free savings account. So I'm certainly having more fun, and I have a trip plan this summer, but it's definitely important to still save money, because if all your money is in your house, then unless you're going to sell it or take on more debt, it's hard to have any money to spend if you run into an emergency or even to retire.
Well, Sean Cooper, we wish you the best of luck, and thanks for sharing your story with us. Sean Cooper, author of Burn Your Mortgage, speaking with us from Toronto. A quick break. You're watching CTV News Channel.